Hello, everyone, and thank you for this wonderful opportunity to mesh my scholarship and teaching with experts and colleagues across the university, the country, and the world. It is really quite extraordinary. I am here to follow up on the Greek history of the IOC and Olympic Games and the notion of hero and arete and visual art. I come from a background of fine arts. I'm a painter and printmaker who then received a PhD in philosophy, focusing on aesthetics. So to me, the human body, we will hear more about performance, but to me, the human body pictured in art, as in Greek art and in other art, but also the performance of the human body is beautiful and spectacular, and it is the Olympic Games that bring us many, many opportunities to see the body in motion and in competition. So my task today is to bring history to light of the 19th century. In 1896, we have a very historic moment. So the Olympic Games start in ancient Greece. I'll give a little timeline in a second. But in 1863, Pierre de Coubertin is born, a baron, a nobleman. By 1892, he is promoting the reestablishment of the Olympic Games in a lecture at the Sorbonne. He becomes the president of the IOC, International Olympic Committee, and holds the first celebration of what we call the modern Olympic Games in 1896 in its ancient birthplace, Greece. It attracted athletes from 14 countries, with the largest delegations coming from Greece, Germany, France, and Great Britain. He is also the designer, we do a lot of product design here as well at the University of Oregon, of the rings, the Olympic rings in 1913 to represent, quote, the 5 parts of the world won over to Olympism. The 5 colors combined to produce the colors of every country against the white background of the flag. And he coined the term Olympism, described it quite often and extensively as Olympism is not a system, it is a state of mind. It can permeate a wide variety of modes of expression, and no single race or era can claim to have the monopoly of it. He has been called, at least on the IOC website, and I borrow this from their scholarship there, the French genius of sport. Even as a born nobleman, he came to embrace the values of liberty, equality, and fraternity. In 1925, at an Olympic Congress in Prague, he said, all people must be allowed in without debate, just as all sports must be treated on equal footing without concern for the fluctuations or caprices of public opinion. In a 1935 speech recorded in Geneva for German radio on the cusp of the 1936 Nazi Olympics in Berlin under Hitler, Coubertin focused on delivering a message about the philosophic foundation of modern Olympism. And philosophers have been debating this since, philosophers of sport. One is Heather Reed. She says, Olympism is an attempt at a universal philosophy based on values common to everyone in the world and expressed in their practice of sport. On September 2nd, 1937, Pierre de Coubertin collapsed in a park in Geneva and subsequently died. He is buried, as pictured on the left, in Lausanne. But per the wishes expressed in his will, his heart was taken to Olympia, where it was placed in a marble stele, pictured on the right, that commemorates the revival of the Olympic Games. It is located, you can visit it, at the IOA, the International Olympic Academy, which opened in 1961, is considered the global center for education in and through Olympism, the Olympism movement, and hosts, among many other educational workshops, classes, and forums, an annual academy for 20 to 30-year-olds, which I always encourage my students to apply for. Here's a brief timeline from the left to the right, ancient Greece all the way to 2024 Olympics in Paris. So the birth of the ancient Greek Olympic Games is considered to be 776 BCE. When I teach Heather Reed's chapters on the Olympic origins in ancient Greece, I teach Socrates and Plato and Aristotle. Plato believed in the moral education of the young, including sport, to learn the values of virtue and giving back to the state in a democracy. It, of course, was in Athens, the birth of the Greek city-state in democracy. The Games ended in 393, and then the long era, considered the Dark Ages, Middle Ages, medieval times, extended from 500 to 1500, and then we have the burgeoning Renaissance of art, intellectual activity, literature, music, 15th, 16th centuries, and I note only one philosopher, René Descartes, dualism, a dualist who divided us into mind and body and stressed rationalism. Descartes was famous for saying, "I think, therefore I am," and it has influenced modern philosophy ever since, including, in many cases, a philosophical resistance to sport and athletics, because it's about the body and not the cultivation of the mind. Pierre de Coubertin, however, was greatly influenced by the European Enlightenment and British pedagogical thought from the 17th and 18th centuries, leading him again in 1896 to revive the Olympic Games under the nomenclature Olympism. So what I teach spans from ancient Greece all the way to the 2024 Olympics. You may or may not recognize the young woman on the right. She is 21-year-old Manija Talesh, who was one of the 37 members of the refugee Olympic team. When she ended her breakdance routine at the Paris Olympics by wrapping herself in a cape bearing the slogan, "Free Afghan Women," she knew she would be disqualified. She said, "I had been thinking about this for 4 months, ever since I knew I was going to the Olympics. I thought, I've got 1 minute when the whole world's watching me. And I thought, what's more important, my dream, my life, or women in Afghanistan? I didn't go there to win. That doesn't matter to me." The cape she donned was made from a burqa, seen by many as the ultimate symbol of the oppression of Afghan women. And because of a rule, of course, in the Olympics against political display, she was immediately disqualified. One of the authors who is exceptionally well-known, has authored very many books, is Heather Reed, a friend who is a friend to the IOC, has run programs there, former professor here in the United States. These are just 3, some of the material I teach in philosophy of sport classes and sports ethics, looking at beauty, to Kalin in Western Greece, which was from a 2018 conference held there. Olympic philosophy, again, philosophers debate. Is it Olympism a movement, a state of mind, as Coubertin said, a philosophy? And on the right, the most recent edition, second edition that I teach, her Introduction to the Philosophy of Sport, Chapter 1, is about the classical origins of sport and the IOC, and Chapter 2 is about the modern games and revival. And lastly, courses here at the U of O. I am Dr. Peg Brand-Weiser. I am Professor Pro Tem, both Philosophy and Clark Honors College. And it's incredibly exciting to work on courses that will be part of this multidisciplinary effort here on campus that takes us across the whole campus. I've developed Philosophy 219 in the past couple of years, which is sports ethics, the study of human actions in sport and their implications for both athletes and spectators. It has been offered 3 times, twice experimentally, once as now an official course. And these are the kinds of questions, in case you're not familiar what we do in philosophy of sport, that we ask and debate. What is play in sports? What is fair play in sports? What is cheating? What is integrity in sports? Should athletes promote political causes? Should college athletes, as of this summer, be paid salaries? Is sport ecologically sustainable over time, given environmental concerns, the travel of athletes, the amount of time, effort, but also resources used to put on professional competitions, as well as amateur? Will the modern Olympism movement bring world peace? That is the goal of Olympism, world peace. And it gets lost sometimes in the hype and the glorification of our athletic heroes, but that is the goal according to Pierre de Coubertin. I've also developed an intro, more broadly based intro to the philosophy of sport, which has been offered 5 times, but again, here are the philosophical questions. What is a game? Does an athlete compete only to win? Well, not the athlete who went there probably to win, changed her mind, and staged a political protest. Are esports sports? Since we have a unit on campus, the answer is yes. Esports are sports, and we study them here. Should trans women be allowed to compete in women's sporting events? Are para-athletic games equivalent to Olympic games? Why do we ban athletes' use of PEDs, performance-enhancing drugs, but allow CTE-producing concussions in NFL football and intercollegiate football? And finally, how is sport participation part of a healthy, satisfying, and meaningful, flourishing life? Most of our students, most people who enjoy sports are not professional athletes, but are fans and amateurs and prospective parents or parents of young children who are athletes. So there is something for everyone in the philosophy of sport, and I hope that we can continue our efforts here and build upon them and make great connections around the world. Thank you.